Hi, Brajan. It's really, really, really great to have you. We've started this topic at this podcast to highlight experts in the different fields that Payflows interacts in, and we're very, very, very excited to have you today to talk about procurement. I met you, I think, about a year ago ish, probably via cold email or a cold LinkedIn, and you were kind enough to respond. And there are a few conversations that you have with people that really, really, really enlighten you and make you learn. And I remember walking out of that conversation and being blown away with your perspective on things. And we'll go into this, but I was particularly impressed that you built your entire stack from scratch with a complete no-code approach. And for many reasons that we'll go into, that's something that really, really stuck to me, and that I think is very interesting to a lot of people. And so I wanted to sort of make an episode out of this. So today we're going to cover how you built your stack at Personio, what works, what you still want to improve, and sort of how you take that and think about tooling in procurement more globally and technology in procurement more globally. How does that sound?
Sounds good to me. Yeah, let's go.
All right. Well, welcome. Tell me a little bit more about sort of your background, how you came to work in procurement, which doesn't sound like, the job that every kid wakes up wanting to do. Tell us a little bit about this.
Sure. So I think the whole situation started during my studies. I have a business degree, and during one of my courses about IT, I had a professor that worked at Trivago back then. I lived in Düsseldorf, a big hotel meta search company. He was the head of IT. We had kind of an excursion. We went to the office. And I was really blown away by the company, by the culture, by everything I seen about Trivago. And then at this time, a couple months later, I finished my previous job. I was working with a job portal, and then I just wanted to work at Trivago, and I picked anything they kind of offered, and I wanted to have something between IT and business. And back then there was a position, a working student in IT procurement. Sound like, I don't know what that is. Buy socks, good driver, just click on the buy button. I think, how complicated can that be? And yeah, I applied, kind of got the job, and stuck with me, right? Kind of everything was very well. The company was very nice. I happened that I was quite good at what I was doing. So I was 2 years at Trivago, and then about 2 years ago, got the opportunity to start procurement at Personio, where I am a little bit over 2 years now. There wasn't procurement at Personio, so the opportunity of starting something from scratch was quite interesting to me. And then both me and my lead, my previous lead, and my current lead as well, we both moved from Trivago to Personio. And since about 2 years, we've been working in procurement, kind of flashing
as a package deal.
Yeah, correct. Kind of we both came together.
Amazing. What is procurement at Personio today? 2 years after, what do you guys own? What type of spend do you manage? And then we'll go into sort of more of the challenges, but you've built it from scratch over the last 2 years. Where is it now?
Yeah, so obviously when we started, it was a bit unorganized, as you can imagine. We have to figure out what's the landscape, what do we have, how do we buy things, what are the big deals, how can we change things quite early on. And there were a couple of processes, you can imagine, right? Contracts all over the place. You kind of have to start. I think if you go into a procurement function, you have a system in place, you have a process in place, and you just kind of learn it and do it. So over the last 2 years, I think we've done quite a good job. We are not a big team. We're about 3, now 4 people. We got a working student quite recently. So we, I think the major parts is kind of building out the system parts. We didn't decide to, there was a procurement solution in place, and we decided to kind of make it on our own, but we can go into that a bit later. We cover quite few areas. So software, we kind of have pretty much within our spend under management. We go into marketing, professional services, freelancers, market research, design, workplace, offices, food and beverages. We're kind of like dabbling in now as well, like a very, very a big freelancer process. And what was surprising to me in the beginning is that we didn't have any reason to do internal marketing. So I know from other companies that it's kind of difficult to force people into going through procurement, because obviously you can just speak with the vendor yourself, do it, and they don't care about the compliance, that they can make be a bit better. And there was definitely not a problem. So from the get go, everybody really came to us because everybody was eager to work with us. So obviously, if you're a marketing manager, your job is marketing and not buying software. If you're an engineer, you want to engineer and you don't want to deal with vendors and buying some IDEs or anything. So everybody was really, happy that we started. And I think over the last 2 years, we kind of expanded spend under management, a lot of categories within our team. And I think it was quite successful until now.
That's absolutely awesome, because the expectation, that you would have, and I certainly talk to a lot of people for whom it works this way, is procurement, being this sort of old company function. And when it arrives in a tech company, people are like, who are these people that I need to deal with? Like, why will they block me? And what you're saying, and I'm sure it's very interesting to a lot of people, is that you were able to prove value really, really fast, so that people actually came to you instead of seeing you as an extra layer of blockage. How
Yeah.
do you think you achieved that? Was it sort of political? Was it positioning? Was it education? Like, what does it look like to gain the trust of all these, people who up to then have been spending like whatever, and not really having to worry about it?
Yeah, I think it's the approach we took. So I would, without judging, I believe the procurement function can be a bit outdated, a bit more old school, a lot of old school people. And I think what we do a bit differently is that we kind of communicate the positioning. We communicated quite early on. It's not that we went to the people and told them, oh, we do it differently. We just started and then word of mouth. That we're not blockers. We don't try to block you from doing something. And our goal is not just saving money, cutting costs, right? We want to invest our money more smartly. So if you come to us, instead of 500K for one thing, you can spend 400, and then the other 100 you can spend on another project, right? So this is kind of like the benefit that people understood quite early on, beside the time investment they require. What we've done is that we made the experience easier working with us than without us, right? If you don't work with us, you need to read everything. Most likely they don't. You need to negotiate. Probably a lot of people don't do it, right? You need to go to legal, to security, check the budgets. All of this requires work. And we set up a process. It's a very easy intake request. You just reach out all basic information, and we see us as a full service procurement, right? So I know a lot of procurement functions are more administrative, that you have to enroll the vendor, legal checks the contract, finance checks the budget, and you as the stakeholder kind of has to manage like 5 different teams and do everything on your own. Procurement just creates a purchase order. So we see each other as like a full service procurement. You just reach out to us, tell us, hey, this is the problem I have. This is how I want to solve it. This is the thing I want to buy, if it's a marketing agency or a tool. And we pretty much take care of everything. So we reach out, we read all the documents, we do the security checks, we check the budgets. We don't ask you who has to sign. We know who has to sign, because we know your cost center, we know the budget. And we made it very, very, very easy for the people to approach us. And the whole process is also very seamless. Like, we usually don't spam our stakeholders with unnecessary information, right? So we don't update them with little details we change in the contract, we increase the liability, because quite frankly, stakeholder doesn't care if the liability is 100 to 200%. They don't care about if we pay 30 net terms.
100%.
They don't care. They care. I have the tool, I have the contract, I can start working with them. We kind of like made it very, very easy for the people to approach us through the whole service, we from request to onboarding to implementation, that people realize, okay, it's so nice, it's very easy to work with you, I can focus on my own topic, and we just take care of everything. Obviously, we ensure compliance and the budgets. The stakeholder doesn't care about compliance, they care about getting the tool, but this is obviously we do.
The company wants to empower people to have broader impact, so that's
Yeah.
but back to that, one of the thing that comes to mind when you say this is, you must have a lot of requests. How do you make sure that you're working and that you're impacting? And that goes to savings maybe, or sort of speed, but the largest ticket items, how do you make sure that you're not sort of drawn out into volume and still as a procurement function? And you said you're quite small because you're only 3, right?
Yeah.
Make sure that you're the most impactful possible.
Yeah, maybe just to the previous point, just to mention again, I'll come back
Yeah.
to this. If you have a bad process, if it's very complicated to reach out to you, if it's just the intake or the whole experience, it's not that people will do it but will not like it, they will just not do it at all, right? So if you don't make it easy for them, they just stop working with you, do whatever
Which is
they want.
adoption. Adoption is the first problem to solve.
Hear it often. We don't know why the users don't do it. We created a lot of explanation videos and tutorial Confluence pages. Here's a guideline, there's a screen recording. But if you require so many things, then it seems that it's so complicated that people just will not do it at all. There's this running gag, check the Confluence page. There's a Confluence page. Nobody reads Confluence pages, and everybody, right? So I have to make it easy. So with the volume, I think so what we do is, in terms of just working, being quite productive, and I would probably say we're quite good at what we're doing, just excluding this fact, we do work with a lot of automation. So we have pretty much everything in procurements running on low code. So work with the platform, and all the manual steps are called monkey work. Creating a PO, creating a vendor, onboarding it, sending out an NDA, saving the document, uploading, creating a PO. All of this is pretty much automated as much as possible. So we do have our human controls and simple steps, but we don't do the manual works, and this is a lot. It's a lot of things. My previous company, we had 2 full-time employees just doing these kind of things. Right?
We see that a lot.
Yeah, and this doesn't happen with us. So one example, we have like a freelancer process. If you want to hire onboard a freelancer, you just go into Jira, fill out. To be fair, it's a bit longer, the form, because we require a lot of information, more than our standard procurement request. And then usually you would look at it, evaluate, reach out to the freelancer, draft the contract, sending out a lot of things. And we have like a compliance check based on a bunch of variables in it. Based on the decision goes to us or to legal, they review it. We work with Ironclad, so the contract is drafted automatically. And so it's a lot of stuff. People don't really know what's happening in the back to ensure compliance, to ensure we provide access to the freelancer. The freelancer's onboarded. We store all the data in some place, and there are just a few clicks. So when we get a ticket, legal looks at it, clicks on a button, we see it, we click on a button, it's sent out, and that's it. So technically we only have to do like 2-3 clicks, and we send out the contract. Since the archiving, everything's automated, right? And I think if we would not automating stuff, you probably would need about 5 more headcounts, because it's a lot of things, right? We think over I don't know a number, but tens, a lot of freelancers just as probably onboarded, and would definitely taken way longer if we would need to draft everything ourselves. So I'd probably say really automation first, wherever we can do it.
That's awesome. And we've already started jumping into this, but one of the things that I find fascinating, and it's already fascinating in how you're describing it, is how you've taken matters into your own hands. There's a lot of tools, Payful is one of them, but there's just a lot of tools out there that have made procurement cool again. And certainly there's been a lot of attention on that market. What was really amazing when I met you was you've built it yourself. And we'll go into the limits and, where there are improvements, obviously, but tell me where you started, where you are now, the kind of skills that you've had to develop to build this, so that, maybe someone else, at a company that is Personio 2 years ago, can get inspired and think through, man, I should really do this, or maybe they should take another tool, but like, help them understand and get inspired by what you've done.
Yeah. So I think kind of like the beginning was that Trivago was also managing the tools, and back our procurement solution I implemented. It was like an off the shelf solution with some,
Procurement IT.
You mean the tool?
No, you were the procurement IT guy.
Yeah. Procurement ops, I like to call it. Yeah. And we made the experience. We reviewed a lot of vendors that looked fine on the website was fine, nice user interface, a lot of white space, a lot of pastel colors. But then the tool itself was quite surface level, right? It didn't do a lot of things. We had like a lot of, limitations of what we could build, and it was a bit difficult to work with it, right? So usually you talk with the customer success manager, you have product features that are critical for your process, and they push it to product, and then you never hear it back, right? You never hear back from them. So when we started Personio, there was no procurement solution. That was kind of the interesting thing for me. And then, okay, we had to decide, either we buy something. It's one of big old school, huge procurement solutions, which we didn't feel fits our needs. Like we're not a manufacturing company. Our supply chain is internet and a MacBook, right? We have some stuff running AWS, but we don't buy data centers. So that's it. Like furniture and food and beverages, but you don't need a Coupa for this, right? So definitely that's not a solution. Then one of these more modern solutions, also like pay flows. Back then, to be fair, and I think none of them existed. So in the last 2-3 years, really kind of, it's like came out of nowhere, which I'm very happy about. Back then was definitely less tools. And we, I think everyone knows the big modern ones. We kind of spoke of all of them, and it was fine, but it was just intake. It was just a form builder with the database behind it. And if I'm not able to work with the database, to do things with the data that I have, then I can just build with a Google form practically, right? It's not much. So we decided, okay, let's do it on our own. And then we can really have like very specific processes tied to our company, to our needs. So we just looked at what we have. And what do we have at the company? Jira, we had at the company, we had Google Drive, DocuSign, all these kind of tools. And this kind of like fits into kind of the approach that I think is the best. Also looking forward to P2P is that it's not one big solution where everybody has to go, and it's more like an orchestration layer that you kind of pick up the people where they work right now, and then they kind of fit into the process that you have. So in
this is music to my ear.
Yeah, I can imagine. So in one example, in my previous company, we had this tool, and then legal worked somewhere else. So we said, okay, well, you can just easily go into our tool and then review it, and then everybody's happy, everything is good. But nobody does it because they have their own process, they have their tool. They don't want to learn another solution. They don't want to go into ours. So what it happened, we push into a legal step. We had to go to their tool, create a ticket, and then update to our. It didn't make any sense, right? So we said that we're definitely not doing this.
It's what I like to call human API. Human feeding data from one system to another.
Yeah, just copy pasting, right?
Yeah.
And at Personio, we're big Jira users, and everything runs through Jira. We don't have any other ticketing solution. So we said, perfect. We take Jira as a front end, 100%, because we don't need to do any user training. We don't need to teach them how to log into SAP or Microsoft Dynamics and fill out the 20th under page of a request ticket. Everybody knows
so
how
that's adoption, which is the point that we had earlier.
Like this, right? How can I reach out? Oh, this is the link. Okay, nice, thank you so much. There's adoptions like very well because they know how to use Jira. So this is what we used, but then obviously we need some kind of tool in the back because not everything you can do out of Jira, right? Like a lot of internal things. So we went with ClickUp, and it's quite well connected. Everything happens in Jira, kind of like synced into ClickUp, and then in the back in ClickUp we have other stuff like vendors, like contracts. Now new in Ironclad as well. We can drop some brand names maybe over here. It's a new
We
tool.
love working with all those companies. I mean, we
Yeah,
orchestrate them.
obviously,
So
so they're kind of happy about this right now too, right? And then purchase orders, life cycle tasks, all these kind of things, right? So kind of really just started with the basic intake, just request, it goes into our system. From that, it developed into more features. So what I mentioned before, the freelancer process, where we have surveys that go out to the freelancer, automated. We have a very nice life cycle automation. So usually what happens is you sign a contract and then goes into a black box for 12 months. And then 1 month before the renewal, you ask, hey,
everyone goes crazy. Shit, did we miss it?
want to renew? Oh no, it was really bad, didn't perform at all. It's like, why didn't you tell us before? To be fair, it's also kind of our job to ask, hey, all good? Okay, good, right? And the month before the renewal, it's not enough time, because then the vendor's like, well, why didn't you tell us before? We could have solved the issue somehow. So what we're doing now, we create the contract, the order form based on the data. We create life cycles, like a little tickets, and then you get a Slack survey depending on certain times, right? Like we have like a 12-month contract, it's once in the middle. You just submit it, basic information, not too much, with some funny gifts at the end, right? So that everybody's happy submitting it. And then we kind of like have it in our ClickUp. We have a dashboard on it, and we can kind of see all the time. Yes, and if we see, okay, somebody was not happy with the tool, we can reach out straight away to the person. And the good thing is completely automated, right? It doesn't require a lot of additional effort. So that's something where we.
How do you think about adoption? Because for a lot of people, you know, I think they would agree with you that the challenge isn't the tool. The tools are there. They're, you know, simplish to complicated-ish. But let's assume they're simplish. How do you make sure that, you know, all your employees at Personio, for example, do fill out the survey, the life cycle survey, or that they do fill out the intake request? Like, how do you think about getting that to 100%? And what actions can you advise people to take to improve those adoption rates?
I think with the life cycle, it's a quite new feature we have, kind of new process. And we did have a couple of people I had to remind a few times. We do it then manually. We have like a reminder and tell to, hey, this ticket is overdue 20 days, reach out. But we didn't have any issues with it, because it's we make sure that the person, it's a very short message. It's linked. It looks very easy. Hey, thank you so much for working. We would like to hear your opinion to kind of improve the tool. Just let us know. And we do also mention it takes like 2 minutes to submit it. And these are always the people that we worked before. So if you request something, you are our stakeholder, and I set your email as the owner of this tool. So we were in touch already. We're not sending it to random people. So if people won't fill out, I don't know what to do. Didn't happen. As of now, everybody really submitted it. With the intakes, I think you kind of have to be ruthless. So again, you have to make the process very, very, very idiot proof, right? Like, everybody has to be able to submit it. No explanation videos, no Confluence pin, no tutorials, because then people don't bother reading it, right? So it has to be very simple. And then we always just, we don't have a ticket, it doesn't exist in our world, create one, and we don't really have a problem with it, because it takes massive 5 minutes to submit it. Most of the time, people already wrote down the description, kind of what they need. Most of the time, they have some document already. So they just link it. Obviously, we're able to, we enable the people, but we're not blockers. Like we have to ask for certain information, and we have processes in place, but we're very pragmatic. So if we have a description field where we usually would want you to submit why you want it, if you have a other document that's linked or some other format or some other thing that might not fit our process, we just go with it, right? Similar, you can request something. Usually I need a data processing agreement and a master services agreement just to check if we can work with you, right? We want to prevent working with companies where the data, goes to some, shady countries or anything.
Yeah.
And then one way would be, I ask the stakeholder, please do the job for me, request it. But the stakeholder doesn't care and doesn't know these things because it's not their job. Their job is to do engineering, to do marketing, to do controlling.
Absolutely.
right? So if we would ask them, do everything for us so that we can give you an approval, why do we exist in the first place? So we don't ask for these kind of things. So like a contact email usually reach out automated to the vendor, hey, this is what I need, and then we can assess, is everything that we need there? Do I have to follow up? So it's not a communication us stakeholder, vendor stakeholder us. It's we talk to the vendor straight away and just update the stakeholder about all the important things.
Yeah.
Stakeholder comes to us, he knows it was very easy. They need a ticket, not a big deal. I don't need to do a lot of work to do it, right? And again, just being ruthless. If you don't create a ticket, we just don't work with you, and you need our help. So you kind of like should create one.
That makes total sense. What I love about everything you're describing is it's a constant reminder that it's about creating an experience and not, having a tool to have a tool. You said it really early on that you want it to be a full service procurement team. And what strikes me is you're constantly using words like easy, simple, idiot proof, which I really like. And this idea that everything is orchestrated and that the user, the employee, never joined Personio to sign contracts. They joined Personio to do marketing engineering. And then the tool, at the end of the day, is just the digital representation of that seamless experience that you've built. And I think I obviously fully align with that vision, but I think you've articulated it in a way that makes total sense. The tool matters a lot less than the experience that you're providing. Let's switch gear a little bit, and you've achieved so much with no code. Where are you going next? What's missing for you to be really happy? Would be my first question, and then we'll go into another.
Yeah, so I think I could imagine where I would like to go more is to integrate our systems more into the other financial systems that we have. We have, financial planning and bigger ERPs. And I do believe there's some, room for improvement, things where we can integrate even more. I like, how we like to do things is that when I ask you once for your cost center or for what you need, I will not ask you again, right? So we repurpose the data constantly. So when I have an intake request, you request pay flows, and your cost center is finance, right? Then for the life cycle, for the contract, for the purchase order, everything that happens afterwards, I don't ask you again because I asked you.
You save the data.
Yes. So having tight integration with other financial systems and kind of like giving it to other teams.
And Personio. And Personio.
Of course, yeah. I mean that's Personio are integrated in our freelancer process, right? Already. So this part, obviously, stand-up procurement, having more higher spend under management, more areas we cover, and I think a big part would be more analytics. So we are very operational. We do work really, quite in depth with our stakeholders, and I do believe there's some room for us in terms of KPIs, analytics, and then looking at the numbers. And not just measuring 20 KPIs and then just reporting on it, but measuring less, but then having action steps.
Really, really driving your strategy.
How can we improve it, right? So I think that these are kind of the areas that we
makes total sense. On the point that you mentioned, tight integration with your financial system, that's one thing that you and I talked about in the past. And you and I always agreed, I think, on one thing, which is intake in itself has very little value. And my take was always, why can't you do this with a type form? And you and I laughed, I think, the first time that we met, because I think we agreed. Where things get more complicated and to some degree more valuable is if you go from what used to be called procure to pay and is now called intake to pay. And that means connecting down to the ERP, handling things like reception, invoice, vendor credit, prepayment, all of these objects that basically accountants need to interact with procurement to understand if they need action or not. And that is sort of the downstream level of integration, which to me is very similar to what you said, which it's about orchestrating. No one should become your ERP because of that. But I think that's the last part where bringing in the accountant to have the full end-to-end life cycle.
Correct. Yeah, I think in these kind of things, it's important. Obviously, there's best of breed, and I think best of suite, right? I'm definitely, based on the conversation, can imagine best of breed is what I'm looking for. Obviously, you can go with like a big ERP that does everything, but then the user experience is really not the best. The adoption is nobody uses it. But I think there has to be like a middle way. So I see like a lot of, we are the procurement solution for low item physical values. So I can buy my table very well with it, but if then you have to integrate way more things, because then I have just for the furnished part, and then I have something for food and beverages, right? So then you have
and
to
that complicates things,
right?
yeah.
And what you mentioned is with the intake, it's just surface level, getting the data. But if the data, I have a tool, it looks very nice, but then the data just sits in a database. And then I have a different tool for the purchase orders. Do I connect them? Do I need to connect them to the ERP? Like, how does it work, right? So
Agreed.
it's what you do with the data once you request it. So I totally agree.
Absolutely. Our vision is that the data should be yours, and it should be in your data lake where you can consume it like any other set of data in your company. But that's beyond the point. I'm curious. Obviously, the obvious question these days is, what are you doing with AI? And I'm more sort of interested in, are you using AI today in your own procurement approach? And then sort of what you're expecting out of AI in the coming sort of years. Maybe month, but certainly years.
So as a procurement manager, I'm mostly buying AI as of now. We have a lot of projects, things we have running. So what we're doing now, besides the standard, so what we're doing using Gen AI to write things, emails, descriptions. I think a lot of my Jira tickets, the descriptions, I'm really not good at writing. All ChatGPT emails, snippet, kind of these kind of things. But this is not very procurement specific. This is for
general workplace. Yeah, agreed.
Same for, you feed the AI data, and then you can ask the AI about certain things, which we're doing too. But this is again, I have Confluence, and I think Confluence has like AI now, and I can ask certain things, but this is not specifically procurement. So more specifically, we do have contract reviews. Our contract management tool that reads the contract, detects certain clauses, and then you can set custom clauses and say, okay, I need a termination clause that has to sound like this. If this doesn't exist, these are other options. So to really speed up the contract review, that's something you, as of now, still have to do kind of like manually read it. And we do, but AI definitely can help in, speeding up the process, have a bit more generalization. And one use case that we personally don't use, but very procurement specific, that I saw from another company that I was very impressed with. It's not very, not for us. It's more for like manufacturing companies, or like that you do purchase orders and ERP updates based on AI. So I am a grocery store, let's say, and I buy 10 kilograms of nuts for 20 euros. And then I have it in my ERP system. I have the order, but then the supplier sends me, hey, but we had some supply chains. It's not 10 kilograms, it's 10 kilograms. And now the price is a bit more. Usually you would go into the ERP, change the order, change everything. And it's a plugin that sits within your inbox, it reads it, and it updates the ERP system.
Phenomenal.
And this was a really nice use case. It saves a lot of, again, not super applicable to us, because Salesforce would not come to us and be like, we ran out of licenses. It doesn't happen, right? With software, it doesn't happen. And
or you're getting half licenses.
Yeah, like half a license with a goods receipt note gets delivered on a CD in 2 weeks. It doesn't happen as of now. And professional services, neither, right? So
yeah,
not super applicable, but this was a use case that I really, really liked, and I acknowledge that there's a lot of potential.
Awesome. Last question where do you see sort of, there's been a lot of procurement tools popping up, as you said, certainly over the last 3 or 4 years. Where do you see this industry going in terms of the next generation of procure to pay? And what are you individually expecting out of them?
Yeah. So I think the orchestration layer is the way to move forward. And I believe all the, more modern tools I spoke with have the same approach. I told you so. This is what I thought. I told you so. So definitely orchestration layer, not one big thing that does everything. We do procurement and accounting and finance and this and HR. I think more like streamlined to one function. Best of breed approach with lots of integrations and good APIs, right? There's a lot of tools out there that I spoke with that don't offer an API. And then if your tool doesn't provide the functionality I need, I can work around by integrating it with something else. But if you don't offer an API, it's 2024. People, come on, offer an API. So definitely this. Maybe some internal workflow, low code functionality, and very good UI, very good UX. I don't want to do 2 master degrees to understand the system, right? It has to be like very easy, not just for the procurement manager, but also for the requester. That's the most important.
For all stakeholders.
These are our customers, right? So this is the customer satisfaction, not the Personio customer that use Personio as our internal employees, and just focusing on this. And we definitely the way to move forward. I do believe there's a lot of, right now procurement tools that integrate ERP integrations, which I see quite big as well, because if go into the enterprise space, eventually you integrate with some kind of big ERP where other things happen too. And the classics, low code workflow features that a lot of tools have now, customizable forms that a lot of tools have now, so I wouldn't focus that too much in. But really the orchestration layer, I have one tree branch maybe that I can do within the tool, but I integrate with everything else. The intake in Jira, it goes into my system, then a review in Ironclad, then something else in another system, then the data pushes the PO into NetSuite or Workday, and then you as a procurement manager just look at it. And last thing, which we also try to push as much as possible, is self-service. So we are very operational. We do a lot of things, but something like an NDA, we have to submit it, we have to sign it, we have to send it, we have to do it. But is there a lot of value creation? Me drafting an NDA, sending it to the vendor? I mean, kind of, but I can dedicate my time to more impactful things. And then we have like a self-service NDA, right? Where everything is archived, tracked where we want it. So it's not that you download a Google template, submit it with some tool that you need to find, and then you send it to us via Slack and we have to archive it. It's a Jira ticket, and then it goes to our contract management system, and then everything's archived.
Signed, archived.
Yeah. And then again, this orchestration layer, but I think these kind of like self-service functions for NDAs, for contracts, for POs, where you enable the employees, your customers, to do things on their own, but you kind of hold them on their hand that they don't fuck up. You know what? That they still do it correctly. They still do what you want to do.
You make it so simple. It goes back to you make it so simple.
Do it wrong. You just have to. You have only one way, and that's the way we want it. So kind of like
idiot proof.
Yeah, idiot proof. Correct. I mean, obviously we'll call customers idiots, but a child would need to understand this, right? So the self-service where I don't need to select, which form do I need to know? There's just one selection. You do it, and then we let you do it on your own. We are not a bottleneck for you, but we still look at everything. We still
have the data,
the numbers. We see the audit logs, when did it happen, what, but we don't have to do it on our
own. Just to wrap up, what you just said, I think is fascinating, because what you're saying, it's almost you're giving a guidebook on how to measure the efficiency of a procurement function. And what you're really saying is the cost of purchasing a new thing or renewing a thing for the organization should be really low and measured in how much effort it takes for the employee, but also how much effort it takes for all the different stakeholders, legal, compliance, and as you said, there's really no point in legal being super involved into an NDA that can be fully automated. Obviously, for a data processing agreement, it's a little bit more complicated, but the idea is ultimately the efficiency is how fast does it take from decision to purchase, and how low in cost it can be in order to execute that purchase for the organization. Is that a correct sort of measurement framework?
100%. And I think everything related to this we mentioned. Just one point would be to minimize bottlenecks, right? It comes with the reviews. If I do expect procurement manager to be able to read a contract and not push the job to work
legal.
with the team, right? So when we get a contract, we worked with quite early on with legal to have a guideline for, let's say, a data processing agreement. So we're on the same terms, what we need to look at, what do we want to make sure. But I'm not pushing a ticket to them and then waiting for their reply, because they're busy with other stuff, right? We have a lot of lawyers to do a lot of important things, and they don't want to read my contract, right? And then I have to tell the vendor, the stakeholder, oh, it's if legal takes a bit, right? So we try to remove much as the bottlenecks as possible so we can work autonomously. And in addition to the automation, that's how, it's possible to have like a very high, what's the metric, request to purchase, contract signed metric. There's probably a metric like this, some KPI in some company, because we just do it on our own, right? We don't have to rely on somebody else. So
that's great.
Yeah, same as the freelancers, right? Takes a couple minutes to onboard somebody, where you wait signatures and approvals. There where you wait when you have to rely on other people, right? But if you kind of do it on your own,
and it creates friction between people, because like people are expecting stuff out of each other and they're pissed off, and that destroys value for the organization. Last question, I promise. Last question. What advice would you give to someone who's starting a procurement organization from scratch, doesn't have a procurement policy at all, doesn't have a tool? What would you advise them to do? Where to start over the next, maybe the first 90 to 180 days or something?
That's a good question. So I think more strategically, I think what's important is to first understand, how do I want to do procurement? Do I want a procurement like everybody else, or do I want to make something different, right? I think the benefit that we had is that we never did procurement in like a very big corporate environment, more in startup environment. Really how I want to do it, and then have this approach guide all your decisions. Then more short term, definitely get to know all your stakeholders. You got to be your best friends, right? Same as if you always want to have a good friend in IT and in HR. As a procurement manager, be good friends with your stakeholders, know who they are. And maybe one thing, just to show there's no procurement, look at the big hitters, the big contracts you have, something usually like a Salesforce or a Slack.
The brands.
Just look at it and try to improve it as quickly as possible. That's what we've done. We started, there were a lot of things. Let's have some quick value creation, right? Just in the first...
To build trust.
Yeah, to build trust, correct. So obviously, if there's nothing, whatever you touch, you make it into gold, because there was nobody that done it before you, right? And then you can create trust very early on. Everybody, oh, wow, this was very well made, good savings, good job. We trust you now more to do things you want to do. So that's
You've got value. I'll adopt your process.
Yeah. And then related to the operations, I would learn some tools, learn how to operate tools. Don't rely on IT, purely on IT to do certain things. Like, I do think you should be tech savvy enough to operate your own tool, but maybe change things on your own a little bit. Work some little small automations for your own, because then you're just a bit quicker than waiting for a ticket that's like 200 in the queue, right? When you have to wait on another team. So really some more tech savvy, some tech knowledge. Don't need to be a developer, but a little bit.
Some knowledge. That's really awesome. Brajan, thank you so much for taking the time. As always, I absolutely love talking to you and sort of learning from you. And I'm excited to continue to do so over the next month and years as you sort of progress and continue to build cool stuff.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.